Hello, and welcome to the commentary for Goblyn Issue 1. I am Solomon Mars, creator, artist, writer of the 555 saga, of which Goblyn is Volume 1. I guess we'll just get into this. I will say right off the bat that I am probably going to be a little self-critical of this book because it is about a year and 3 months old, I think. It's been a while since I actually did this book, and I know that I've actually grown as an artist, which is awesome. One of the better parts of, being an artist, or even watching artists. It's just watching them grow. I love watching an artist grow, and I'm happy with some of the strides that I've taken. I guess I'll start by talking about this cover. The horizontal format versus vertical format. My reasoning for going down this path was I went to school for animation, 2006 to 2010. And I actually wanted to be not only a character designer, but I also wanted to do storyboard work. I wanted to be a storyboard artist, which is very, well, I've heard it's difficult. Not very difficult, but I heard it's difficult to break into right off the bat, mostly because most of the storyboard guys already out there have proven themselves year after year after year. So I don't know. It's a very strange industry. Anyways, having taken to that vertical format, that horizontal format, after so many years of working in a vertical format and comics in general being mostly in a vertical format, it just seemed right to do it in this horizontal format. One, because it seems to match itself to computer monitors, because I wanted this to be a webcomic. So it seems it matches itself well to computer monitors, as well as it just lends itself a little bit better to that page, that single panel format. Like, if you try to do single panels off of it's how to explain? It's that idea of when you read a standard comic and it's a vertical standard vertical comic book. It reads so that you can see every panel, and you can easily look down at the bottom of that page and you see what's going to happen. And for some people, yeah, it's kind of a teaser. It gets you really excited about getting to that point in the story. But it can also spoil a really great reveal. And so this is part of the reason why I decided to not only go the vertical format, but also using this page by page Swift flash format. So more about this cover. Early on, I did learn how you're supposed to present covers, and by that I mean, like, as far as using proper colors and things like that. Like, one of the things I was taught was, if your book is in a store, in a shop, a comic book shop, and you just walked in and that book is at the other end of the shop, you should be able to spot it from the other side of the store. Not necessarily easily, but it should definitely attract someone's attention. And so you tend to use brighter colors, which is why it's usually I wouldn't say frowned upon, but it's usually books use lighter colors initially, until they're identifiable. They'll use brighter colors to sort of attract attention, to draw out attention, because usually books are stacked up next to each other. Yeah, and so it's you have to be able to compete. The second thing is titles. I learned never to obscure your title, at least not initially. Don't obscure your title until your title has lasted long enough that it can be identified easily, even if it didn't have a title. Don't obscure it, and don't leave the title off. I also decided to use bright colors for the title. In this particular one, as far as the drawing, I just kind of wanted to get people's attention. So I used, a sort of one of the monsters that's in the actual issue clawing at Jeff's head while he was wearing Sankofa as a hat. I just wanted to throw in a couple of elements that are in the story onto the cover and give it sort of a claustrophobic feel. I think it came across fairly well. I think. I could be wrong. But personally, I think it's a little too cramped. I definitely learned to pull away in later issues and really utilize the space, but this was a new venture for me, doing a horizontal format. And I wasn't exactly sure that it was going to work initially, but I've since come to love it, and it's pretty much the only way I'm ever going to do comics from now on, I believe. Even my print comics are going to have a similar layout, but that's a story for another day. Maybe a live stream or something. So we start off the comic with really rough illustrative work. Whoa. Anyways, of course it does. It looks rough to me, but it was because this was a new technique that I was attempting. I've been trying pretty much since the first time I touched Photoshop. I wanted to stop inking. Like, I've always had a problem with inking. I've always felt that it takes something away from the pencils. It's the same for animation for me. When you look at the pencil test or rough or even cleaned up pencils in animation, there's a level of kineticism that's in those drawings, and the same goes for comics. There's a level of kineticism that's in the drawings. There's so much life in there, and then when someone goes over and they ink over it, somehow it stiffens. It becomes less bouncy. I don't know how it is. I've talked to a lot of pencilers who actually have someone else that inks their work, and I've asked them about it, and they kind of think about it, and they don't really say too much about it. I guess not to be insulting to the inker, but most of them have just kind of come to terms with it, and say, you can't get too attached, and you just kind of let it go. You let your baby go, and let somebody else work on it. But I have never felt comfortable with someone else inking my work. I've attempted when me and my friends were in high school. A couple of my friends attempted to ink my work, and they have their own style. So all this time I've been trying to find a way to bring my pencils, my direct pencils, into Photoshop, and then just use those as ink lines. And so I finally, after honestly 10 years of trying to figure out how to get it to look right, where I didn't have to do a lot of cleaning up, I got the beginnings of it, and that's what this is. That's why I use this particular shade of brown and things like that, so that it's not a black line. It's not an ink line. It's my pencil line. So I should probably talk about the story, huh? So enters the characters Jeff and Sankofa. I definitely was trying to convey some of Jeff's attitude in this picture. He's relaxed. He has sort of a smug look on his face. He's just like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care at all. you know. And that was, how his character was in the beginning. He was kind of smug, bit of a jerk, um, but when he's on his own, he can do whatever he wants, and that's how he believes in his mind. He can do whatever he wants. He controls his own world. Um, yeah, and Jeff's his attitude. Oh, just some kid, He's just like whatever, and he has a real problem with not necessarily authority figures, but I definitely wanted to create a parallel to a period in my life where you're in that transitional period, like 14, 15, 16 is sort of a transitional period between childhood and young adulthood, where, by that I mean people literally are treating you like you're between those two worlds, some people will treat you like a child, and some people will treat you like a young adult. And it's just kind of it was a weird place for me, I remember, and I wanted Jeff to he's in that same place where he wants to be very much independent. And in a sense, in many ways, he actually is. He's out in the world on his own, and that was his answer to independence. I have to leave, essentially run away. And the thing is, he has a problem with adults because they are seen in his mind as sort of an authoritative, sort of oppressive figure, and it's mostly because in his world by himself, or in his world with Sankofa, he is his own person. He is independent and he is an adult. He has to make adult decisions and be responsible for himself and be responsible in general, or not, whatever he wants, and so when he is in contact with, say, a village and adults come into the situation, it reminds him of his true place in the world. Is that no matter how great the accomplishment he makes, some adult is always going to walk into the scenario and go, "Okay, sit down, kid." They're always going to, call him a kid, treat him like a child, and that bothers him. It's part of the reason why he's a little angry, and why he generally doesn't help people. And it's just, I found it kind of funny how his character formed so that he will talk down at another kid. He'll talk down at other people and call them kid, but he doesn't like to be called a kid or a child himself. And I find that interesting how the character sort of created itself in that way, over time. This particular page is the one page in the entire series thus far where he actually mentions his age, and it's been something that has come up. I'd say in the last few months, where I have done the Goblyn data book and done some character profile pages in which I showed Jeff's age, and people, a lot of readers were not aware of his age, and it's because even though it hasn't been that long since issue 1, it was only mentioned once how old Jeff was, almost 15, and since then he hasn't actually said anything about his age. Yeah. So, Jeff's just being a jerk. We find out the reason why the kid is running. There's something pursuing him. I kind of like that scene, because there's the hill that the hill in the foreground and the hill in the background, sort of painting around that monster. It kind of draws the focus in a spiral down to that character there, or it spirals outwards to Sankofa. I always like when happy little accidents like that happen. But the evolution of Goblin is very interesting, I guess. Jeff kind of separated from Sankofa. Originally, they were both kind of the same character in their, as far as their attitude and the things that they did. They were both very aggressive, very run around, punching things, destroying things, very harsh. And eventually, Sankofa kind of morphed into his own really definitive separate character, and he's almost become Jeff's conscience, he's kind of that part that kind of keeps Jeff anchored, or keeps him caring about the world, because Jeff is very much supposed to be like the anti-hero. He doesn't care about anyone else. He's very self-absorbed, very selfish. And well, there's definitely a reason for it, but of course, we'll get into that as the series goes on. And for the sake of spoilers, I won't talk too much about it. But there is a reason. But yeah, I love that particular face that Sankofa is making. I don't know, something about it is just very dirty. It just looks weird. Okay, enter Elile, who's a crybaby. He's just a crybaby. No. I don't know. I don't know what to say about Elile. I don't know what to say about. I love his nose, his little red nose. I actually put a little bit of work into this character. He's a non-essential character, except for the fact that he's part of the plot device of this story, this particular story. I usually don't care about characters that don't impact the story a lot, like Elile's parents that you'll see later. I didn't put any work into their design at all, and because of that, they look boring. And Elile is bordering on generic character for me. Yeah. But I think his shirt, is kind of nice. This particular picture really bothers me because I was still trying to get a grasp on using depth, using different levels of blur to create depth, and I was completely missing the mark here. I was just not accomplishing that at all in these first issues. But it was something that I had been attempting to get a better understanding of for about 3 years before I actually did Goblin. When I made that transition to color comics. Yeah. Oh! Elile just got hit. Yeah. That's gonna hurt. Yeah. And yeah, I love this little wood sprite. It's kind of cute and it's kind of creepy. Then I wanted to, one of the things, how to explain? I wanted to convey kind of there's kind of a consistency across specific levels of, or species, within the species of sprites, there are consistencies amongst them, and one of the consistencies is that teardrop shape for a lot of minor sprites. Smaller sprites kind of have that look to them, and it appears a few more times, that shape in future issues of Goblin, and it will appear more as the series goes on. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things like nature, that nature does. Um, like with things like insects. A lot of insects look the same, or they have similar. There are consistencies amongst them. Birds, obviously, a lot of animals. Bipedal animals. There are consistencies amongst us, even though we're very different. One person is very different from the next, and yet there are consistencies amongst us. And that was one of the things I wanted to have in the Goblin universe. Mostly for the sake of design. Sometimes I can get really wild with designs, but I wanted things to be kind of entry level in the beginning. Yeah, these little cute little cat paws. Yeah. And he's supposed to look like a persimmon. Whoops, there he goes, sliced in half. Persimmon because I was, how do I explain? As a kid, I was exposed to the wildest stories. Like the skin of a persimmon was poisonous. It was toxic. And later on, another one that I heard was that it was so toxic and bitter that it could turn your lips inside out, which I find as an adult to be just a really silly idea that it could create, I guess, muscle or nerve damage and do that. That's just so bizarre. Swelling, yes, I could see that. Yeah, sure, swelling, but turn your lips inside out. That's just bizarre. But these were the haunting things that I was exposed to as a kid. Wives' tales and folklore and all sorts of things, and that's part of what makes Goblin what it is. Not only that it's my dream world, but also it has a basis in stuff that I was exposed to as a kid. A little kid, a very small child. Stuff that maybe keep most kids up at night, but no, I don't know. I'd hear stories and I'd just be like, what? That's weird. And just keep going. I love this particular sequence because of that picture. This is great. Had fun with that. Oh, poor Eli. Look at him down there. He's in pain. Look at him. He's all purple. Poor guy. And Jeff just doesn't get it. He's so self-centered, and so he just doesn't get it. He's oblivious. He's just too busy criticizing this kid to realize that he's been poisoned. Sankofa has to point it out to him, and he's oh yeah. And it's not that he's stupid. It's just that he's so excitable. He figures just because he can run around beating up monsters that any kid should. He figures every kid should be as tough as he is, and that's not the case. He's a little gifted with his toughness. Yeah. That cut. I'm sorry. The scratches on his arm are way too deep. Those are really, really deep. He's gonna need stitches. I mean, I have scars from where I have cuts like that on my hand. Where I had cuts like that on my hand, and I probably should have gotten stitches, and I didn't, and so there's nerve damage. So sometimes my hand freaks out on me a little. It's hard to make grasp a pencil and hold it for too long. And sometimes it just hurts. I don't know. Yeah, I should have just done some surface scratches. Nothing serious. That right there. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna need some serious medical attention for that. Yeah, and the sort of joke where Jeff he's telling him his name. It was sort of my way of introducing the readers to the characters, Jeff and Sankofa. I just realized that the entire book is in caps. Wow. Huh. I just realized I was doing it in all caps. Hmm. Anyways, yeah. Um, this is also something else that I stopped doing was, even though I have entire systems, like I have my own term for the days of the week, the months of a year. I have my own term for a year, hours, minutes, um, things like miles, distances and stuff like that. I have terms for all these different things. I found that I realized after I had done it in this particular issue, he says 2 limbs, which is essentially just 2 miles. I realized that unless people know what a limb is, unless I tell them, I define it for them, um, then they may not get it. So I'd like to give. I always I don't like to coddle readers. I've made that statement in livecast before. I don't like to coddle readers, and I don't like to dumb down things for readers. And but as a creator, you should never really assume that everyone is going to just automatically be on the same page as you. And this was one of those things I wasn't sure if people would be on the same page. It's a little bit obvious what they're talking about. That they're talking about a distance, but it can get really complex. Like later issues, the particular terminology, it just starts stacking one word after the next, and it's just like, wow, they're talking complete and utter nonsense, but it's actually terms in their own world. Yeah. I definitely want to talk about this. I really wanted to keep these under keep them at half an hour, but I'm going to go over, I can see. The idea of Jeff carrying people on his back started with the original version of issue 1, which actually I trashed because I didn't like where the story started. I actually started the story at the Red Castle story arc, which is several issues later, about 6 issues later, 7 issues later rather. It's actually, about 7 issues later than this. But in the originals, Jeff would carry Amy on his back places. Like if they had to really get somewhere really quick, or if he was jumping into high places, which he does a lot. Excuse me. He would carry her on his back because she's not a logic smith. So she would slow him down, and so he would just get on my back and just carry her, which is something that I did with my little sister when she would tag along with me and my friends and we'd go places. She would have sometimes a hard time. Well, early on she would have a hard time keeping up. As time went on, she was fine. She was able to keep up just fine. But yeah, it's all just stuff that I pulled from real experience, dream experience. Yeah, just fun. Oh, poor Eli. Look at his face. Oh, he looks so. Actually, he looks like he's swelling there. But it's just, I wanted to do that weird little, in pain sort of face. Yeah. Alright, so we finally come to the village. Another botched drawing as far as trying to get across distance, convey distance and stuff. This one just didn't work. But I learned as time went on. Yeah, more non-essential characters. You can see that they're just so boring. Anyways, they're Eli's parents. They are also boring. We will not talk about them for too long. Just I tried to make them look a little bit like Eli, since I created Eli first, then his parents second. They're so boring. God, they're so boring. Anyways, I love this picture. Mostly because I was playing around with creating like mood lighting and things like that, and I wanted it to look like he was in a fairly dark lit room, lit by a candle, and so I played around with different layers in Photoshop to create the lighting effect. Oh, sorry. Um, I really like the way that this picture came out. Eli's little bird chest. Look at him. He's so sickly. Poor kid. And he's got a natural medicine on him, on his forehead and on his wound and stuff, which is something I really love. I love, when people use that kind of medicine where they grind, they grind it up themselves, mix it with a little liquid, and they put it on specific leaves that are medicinal, and those are really cool. I've only witnessed that like once in my life. Yeah, but it was still kind of cool. And so now we're actually getting into the quest, and Jeff is starting to realize that the story, even though he's not aware that he's in a story, but this scenario is very, very, very typical. It's a quest, and it's just like everything that they are saying is very, very typical of a village kind of scenario. Oh, great hero, please help our village. There is a monster at the edge of town, and he's just like, really? And right here is like he is really unimpressed. He knows exactly where this is going, and that's one of the things that I wanted to do with the character of Jeff. He doesn't break the fourth wall, but he very much is unimpressed with what we consider like tropes. He just does not like that thing because in his world, yeah, there are, great heroes. In our world, there are great heroes too. And there are people that go off on quests and things like that. And he's just not he's not in the mood to go off on a quest and save a village. It's a very, very, not necessarily stereotypical thing, but a very typical thing. It's very old world, even for them. It's like our medieval adventures, Knight's Quest. For them, it's the same. They had a similar history where it not necessarily medieval, but where there was a level of chivalry and things like that, and heroes off on quest. And he's a very modern kid, and he's just like, no, I don't think so. I don't like this. And it's all about the fact that I personally really enjoy subversion. I like to subvert people's expectations. I don't try too hard, but sometimes when I can see it coming, I will try to write the opposite, or I will write how a situation would really play out. This kind of situation, if I walked into a situation and someone, propositioned me with a quest to save their village, I'd be like, well, what the heck am I going to get out of this? I would really think it over in my head. I'm like, even if I, had powers, or, was a logic smith like Jeff, I'd have to think it over. And that's the kind of thing that comes into play when I'm writing Goblin, but also just in general, when I'm writing, Jeff kind of writes himself now, and it's because he is that kind of character. He sort of wrote himself to be that kind of character over time before I got to this point where he's just kind of like, I don't think so. I don't care. Why should I care about you and your stupid little town? And he just sort of writes himself that way, which is really cool. But yeah, he's just so unimpressed. And yeah, you can see him. He's like, yeah, roots of steel, warriors, herbs, blah, blah, blah. I love that. I don't love how early on I just could not what is a term? Stay on model, which is actually a term and a thing that I don't really like. I don't like the idea of staying on model, but I was a little disturbed by the inconsistencies of Jeff. His head, his face, and his hair mostly. I wasn't comfortable with this new version of him. He went through a lot of changes in the 6 months before this actual book launched, including being 10 years old prior to this. And that first version of Goblin, he was 10, and Amy was 12. Yeah, they were little kids, and it was just completely ridiculous because they looked ridiculous. And I think there are 2 pictures in my DeviantArt gallery of early Goblin stuff where he's 10. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. And this is me explaining, what a goblin is, and kind of loosely explaining what a slugger is, what a slug is, and what slugging is. All different terms for a bounty hunter, a bounty head, and bounty hunting. And a goblin is simply a mankind who slugs both mankind's and monster kind, whereas a dragon is a monster kind that slugs both mankind's and monster kind. And then there are other terms for a mankind who only slugs mankind's and a monster kind who only slugs monster kind. But that's for another commentary track and a much later set of issues. Or eventually the online Goblin data book that I'm putting together via the awesome Goblin group on DeviantArt that was created there. So Jeff is off on his quest. Woohoo! Just very uninterested, just very pissed about it all. But he's gonna do it just because one of the things I wanted to establish early on is that really, as selfish as Jeff is, he can't turn down a situation like this, because he knows suffering, and he doesn't like to see people get hurt by someone who is doing it deliberately. He doesn't like to see deliberate, people being preyed upon, and that's kind of a translation of me, I don't like that, deliberate predatory behavior. And especially Jeff doesn't, as a kid, as an older kid, he doesn't like seeing younger kids being picked on or hurt or something like that. Even though he's a bit of a psychological bully, I guess you could consider him. Yeah. Oh, talking about the smell in this page. I had this thing about ginger and cinnamon, and I wanted the roots that are all over the area. I wanted to convey to the reader that was the smell. I don't think I actually said it because in this story there's no such thing as ginger or cinnamon. They don't exist on this planet, at least not with those words. With those, they don't use that word, ginger or cinnamon. I love this. This is my favorite picture. This is my first favorite picture. I have a couple of favorites. This is my number 1 favorite picture of the entire thing. Jeff looking down on these guys. They look so pissed. I love the way that this picture actually looks. There is a little bit of distance. It looks like there is some distance between him and them. And I love the little roots sprawling about the area. it's all really nice. It's kind of fun. It was a fun picture. And those are really, it's just the same one sprite, just copied a million times. But you can kind of tell if you just look at them. I'm sure no one was fooled. And there's Jeff jumping right into action the way he always is. He's very doesn't think about it. He just kind of dives right in. I mean, he dove off of a cliff down onto these things. That is crazy. But he's very adrenaline driven, you know. He's a kind of a wild character. At least more so in the beginning than in the issues to come, but only because I wanted to introduce a few ideas to the reader. I wanted to introduce Jeff as a fighter, you know, kind of adrenaline driven. And then I wanted to introduce some of his powers and things like that, and then go back and start talking about some of his, you know, some of the character building things. You know, show a calmer side of him, and I'll talk about that more in later issues. And later issue commentary. Yeah, that punch is just incredible. He punched that thing so hard it just blew a hole right through it. Which can only be done if he's wearing Sankofa. On his own, he would have to actually use logic, and it probably wouldn't do that kind of damage to that thing. It might kill it, but it probably wouldn't blow a hole in it because Jeff is not a very accomplished logic smith because he doesn't study. And yeah, he's complaining because these things are just like, they're like nothing. They're like marshmallows to him. He's just smushing them. And in come the big one. Yeah. It's not a mommy. It's just a larger creature that was spawned by Sleemer, which shows up later. I'm assuming that if you're watching the commentary and listening to it, then that you've already read issue 1. If not, oh my God, go back and read it and then watch this. But hopefully you have. But they're actually all plant-based. Which is not something I've really discussed yet, and I think I'm mostly going to discuss it in the Goblin data book works, that a lot of these creatures are plant-based because Sleemer is plant-based. These are spore-born creatures from him, and they are plant-based, which is why I had absolutely no problem slicing them up the way that I did, and why they also bleed in unusual colors. Even though Monster Kind technically would. Oh, wow. Yeah, that thing has a really big mouth. I think I was thinking about the creature from the Dark Crystal with the mouth. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Ooh, kicked right in the stomach. Oh, I love that picture. I would love to animate that kick, that dive and that kick. Ooh. That particular, I love that particular claw just crunching into the ground. This is one of those pictures I was really into when I was coloring it. Clearly, look at all the detail in that arm. I was really into that picture. But I was also playing around with some concepts that I was going to use later on Sleemer, because he has sort of a textured body, and it's a lot like this. Yeah, I love that look on Jeff's face. Whoa, you know, moving out of the way. Yeah, he has a lot of close calls. I like close calls, though. I've had a lot of close calls myself in life. Oh, yeah, and he's having a hissy fit. Oh, he's throwing a temper tantrum. Again, I think that was the creature from the Dark Crystal. He would throw temper tantrums, and his mouth would just be like this big maw. Oh. Anyways, Jeff is just ready to fight. I love that picture. The way his eye looks in that picture, he's just ready to fight. He's like, yeah. That's also something that reoccurs. Jeff kind of tackling, putting all his weight into pushing something, off balance with his shoulder, hitting it with his shoulder. You can't actually see me, but I'm actually doing that particular movement right now. That's so weird, but that's the way I work, though. I actually, I'm very physical. When I speak, I move, I talk with my hands and all sorts of stuff. If you ever meet me at a convention, hopefully you will at some point when I actually start doing more conventions, and talk to me, and you'll see. Not only am I talkative, I go on tangents, I get easily distracted, and I speak with my hands, and I also read lips. So, don't be too intimidated or concerned if I'm staring directly into your face, your eyes, or right at your face. It's because I read lips. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that both me and my older sister do. We read lips. I can hear perfectly fine, I think. Oh! Yeah. A knee right to the mouth. I love that picture. It's so intense. And it's like there's a little compression, a little concave going on there, where his knee is contacting that creature's mouth. That creature does not have a name, I think. I think they're just wood sprites. I don't know a particular type of wood sprite it is. I don't know. Mostly because they're not general. They're not just kind of wood sprites that are born in the wild. They were born from someone specific. But I guess technically they all are. But these are not where they for lack of a better term, reproduce with one another. Like plants, spreading their spores amongst each other and things like that. And these particular things don't. And so you don't have entire tribes or what I call thresh. They're called thresh in the Goblin universe. A tribe of sprites are called thresh. And none of these are from any specific thresh. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a powerful knee kick. Look at that tongue. The tongue is disgusting. It's textured. Ooh. Yeah, he's pissed. He's really upset. Of course, this particular jump is very ugly. And I'm going to pass it. But this punch is amazing. There's a lot of power behind that swing. I like that. There's a lot of power in that. Yeah, so much as pulling the flame on Sankofa forward. Yeah, and there was a scene between that last page and this page where it showed the monster kind of digging into the ground as it was pushed by the force of the punch. But I thought it looked better just showing the after effect of it. Showing the ditch that had been dug into the ground and the trees that it snapped, and Jeff kind of standing there, a little smoke, very lightly, kind of pulling up off the ground from where it just kind of, that thing really, there's nothing left of it, I'm sure. There's nothing left of it, and it's surely dead. Yeah. And Jeff's hands swelling from having hit it so hard. That's funny. Little sausages for fingers. Yeah, I think that's one of the only times that I've actually drawn fingernails on the character. I don't like to draw fingernails because I don't like to have to color them. After I've colored in the hand, having to go in and do that little bitty teeny weeny detail is annoying to me. Because it's inconsistent. I'm inconsistent with something like fingernails. Sometimes I'll put them and sometimes I won't. So he's taken off Sankofa, and his reason, is, he can't think clearly, if he keeps him on for too long. And this has to do with the fact that Sankofa he's a logic artifact. He's not a true sprite. He's not a naturally born sprite. He was put in that body. And the thing about logic artifacts is if they are an item that can be worn or held for extended periods of time, something like an article of clothing, a mask, a weapon, something like that, they can have adverse effects. They can make you a little loopy. because there is a sort of cross-pollination of the mind, because it is a living thing. They are living things. There's a spirit or something is trapped inside of them, and it's been craft worked is the term into that and placed inside of it. And so it's conscious. It's a conscious thing, and if it's something that you can wear, then you're not directly trading. You're not trading brains with them, and they're not. It's like when Jeff wears Senkofa, it's not like their brains meld or anything, but some thoughts cross over. It's sort of like Senkofa becomes sort of Jeff's very very verbal subconscious. Very loud suddenly. It's almost like there are two brains up there. And that kind of thing can really take its toll on you if you were to use it for an extended amount of time. It can make you a little crazy. You kind of lose your grip on yourself, lose kind of your grip on your personal reality. And that's the case with logic artifacts, using them. Not only for like a logicsmith, but even a regular person, probably even more so. Because a logicsmith, if they've actually been trained and not just kind of wild logicsmith, which does happen. Jeff is borderline. He had very little schooling, but they have a little bit more, not necessarily conditioning, but they are a little bit more trained. They can work with it. And I feel like I'm kind of going off on a tangent there that I shouldn't be. So I'm going to stop talking about that particular topic and just kind of end it at you can lose yourself. And it's something that I'll definitely talk about more as the story goes on. Not just in these issues, in these few issues now, but I mean in general as the series goes on. It's something that will be talked about more, and I can say without a doubt that there will be other characters that will come into contact as clear examples of someone who has lost their mind because of such a thing. Yeah, and roots, and more roots. Look at all those roots, just all over the place, just creeping all over stuff. Excuse me. That's what I love roots. I love that they do that kind of thing, I love that they look hairy and they're organic. I love organic. I'm not a big fan of linear anything, like linear structures. I hate rulers. I love organic shapes and organic things. Like I'll sit and I look at trees. I love trees because they just grow. They just grow out and up and in all sorts of different paths. If something gets in its way, it grows around it, and it's just great. It's so great. I love organic structures, and so as far as these roots, I love them. Apparently, Jeff does not love them because of the way he's looking right now. This was a particularly cartoonish picture. Not that I'm against anything cartoony. I mean, I love cartoony stuff. But this one, with his hair standing up on end and stuff, it's just so weird. But it helped convey this particular message that he has seen something that is personally horrifying him. And yeah, it's just these roots everywhere, and what is, without a shadow of a doubt, everybody else that has ever gone on a quest to help that village or destroy this particular creature that is at the center of this forest. I love the detail. These are my second favorite pages, these last ones, because of the detail and the way that they look. It's just great. I love these trees, the detail in the trunks of the trees. They're very old trees. They remind me of an old man's elbows. I don't know why. The little hairs that you can see on Sleemer's body there, like little hairs on a root and the little texture on them. I really got into these last couple of pages. But and of course, the final reveal of this Knoll spirit, a hillock mound, as it were. Sleemer, with all these trees growing on him. He was supposed to have a lot of trees growing on him, and they were supposed to be smaller to make him look bigger, but I pulled back a little, especially in the next issue. I pulled back a lot. But yeah, I definitely walked away from this issue when I got halfway through the coloring and even the drawing, and came back to finish it, and that's why like the end is so much more. It looks like I was more into it because I really was. And that's one of those things, definitely don't push yourself. I mean, it's good to have, set deadlines for yourself and things like that, but never push yourself as an artist. Otherwise, you'll come out with some work that just, it looks exhausted. It looks like you were exhausted, while working on it, and it won't really represent you well. And there are examples of that in this issue where I was exhausted, but also because I was working on this issue. It took 2 months because I was in school at the time, and so I had to constantly work on it. And when I wasn't working on schoolwork, in my downtime and things, and so sometimes I was in the mood to work on it, sometimes I wasn't. But I knew I wanted to get it done. I needed to get it done, but and I did. I got it done. Hooray! So that is Goblin issue 1. I hope you enjoyed the commentary. I hope I didn't ramble too long, and I hope the audio is okay. I'm using an old mic, so there may be some issues with static, and I apologize for any bad audio quality. I hope to kind of rectify that in future commentary tracks. Gonna buy a new microphone. Yay! So I guess with that, I'm going to say good day to you, and thank you for joining me on this silly little adventure.